it's like making value deposits along the way, right? So it's like, it's crazy. There's so many times people have been like, well, what do you sell? Like, I didn't have a portfolio on my site for like the last 4 years. It was all referral stuff. But it was like, I wasn't going to just go sell something because I needed to put something out there for sale. But in the meantime, I was like, I've got this platform. I've got an audience. There are cool people doing great stuff in WordPress. Let me use my platform, period. So there was zero expectation. But now, because I've given, it's like people trust me.
Welcome to the WP Elevation Podcast. I'm Ginny McEnany and I'm your host today. And I chat to the legendary Kim Doyal, also known as the WordPress Chick. It was an honor to chat to Kim today. She knows the game so well. She's been in the business for over 10 years and we have a really good, insightful conversation about how her business has evolved in that time. And we relate that back to you and how you can actually build those foundations in your business so that when it takes a different turn, you can go with that turn and comfortably try something different. So that's really interesting. You'll love that. The other thing that I think you're going to get a lot out of is we chat about what happens to your business when you encounter a tragedy. So whether that be a natural disaster like the recent hurricanes or the death of a loved one. And that happened with Kim, and she'll tell us about how she coped with that and gives us some really great, just grounded advice on if something happens to you, how you can sort of work your way through that with your business. So she has some excellent ideas and I loved every minute of chatting to Kim, and I think you will too. So without further ado, let's meet Kim for the second time on our WP Elevation podcast.
This is the WP Elevation podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
Just before we get into this episode of the WP Elevation podcast, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, GoDaddy Pro, who help us make this all possible. But instead of just giving you a spiel about how great GoDaddy Pro is, we thought it would be more interesting to introduce you to a GoDaddy Pro customer, a WordPress consultant just like you, and see what kind of work they're doing with their clients and the impact they're having on their community.
Melissa Gessinger of One Day Labs uses her talents to build websites in one day for her clients. With GoDaddy Pro Tools, she's able to achieve an entire website in one day for nonprofits that are looking to impact their community through her One Day Labs Day of Giving.
We have found that a great way to give back to the community is to have these events once a year where we are able to build a website for a nonprofit in our community for free in a day.
That's awesome. And then how did the Raise Collective website, how did that help their nonprofit? How did it help make an impact?
We built a site for the Raises Collective, which is a Sonoma County nonprofit that does a lot of giving back to the community, like the Hispanic community, people of color, through art installations and programs and that kind of thing. So having a good website built by a professional just raises an organization's credibility. And so being able to go through the process with us, we in about an 8 to 10 hour period of time, they had a new logo. Were able to have a brand new website with both English and Spanish translation.
Where can people find you to learn more about your business?
They can go to onedaylabs.com.
For more information about GoDaddy Pro, visit godaddy.com/pro for tools to support your business.
Okay, now let's get back to the show and see if we can help you take your WordPress consulting business to the next level.
Kim Doyal, welcome to the WP Elevation podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jen. This is so fun to get to talk to you. I love Troy too, but this is great.
Yeah, Kim and I have emailed each other lots over the years, and this is the first time we've actually semi-met face-to-face, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. I was like, wow, the voice to the name, like to get to fit them together. It's awesome.
Now, before we start, I've been doing a bit of, I know everybody knows about Kim Doyal. You're prolific in the WordPress space. I was doing a little bit of extra research and seeing what I could find about you, and I found two things that you love that I love as well. So 80s and 90s films. And
oh my God.
So I'm into a bit of both of those as well. So I was thinking, I've got to ask you, what's your favorite 80s or 90s film?
Oh, Breakfast Club, hands down.
It is. That's up there with one of my top 5, I think.
Yeah. No, it's like I could probably quote the whole thing. It's ridiculous, but I still use sayings. And I'm like, I'm still friends with all my high school girlfriends. So it's, one of them, we're horrible with the movie quotes, and it's like hashtag constantly. And I'm like, simple pleasures. But my kids love them now too. So that's fun.
I love that too. My favorite is Ferris Bueller. And whenever I sit down with the kids to watch it, I annoy the heck out of them because I say every single line of the movie.
Totally. But
okay,
they're good movies.
So for anyone who doesn't know Kim Doyal, can you tell us a little bit about your business and what you do?
Yeah, this is so crazy. It's evolved so much, Jen. And I'm like, I don't know if you see, I'm kind of transitioning again.
Yes.
So the WordPress Chick, I just, when I started my business in 2008, I thought I was going to be this millionaire information marketer. Well, it didn't work out. And it wasn't that it didn't work out, but I found WordPress. And so I kind of got sidetracked and I started, I'm going to do this. And and it was ignorance is truly bliss. I mean, it was kind of ballsy to claim the WordPress Chick. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was a good name. And truthfully, I just stuck with it and I kind of kept figuring it out. And next thing you know, it's like I was bartering websites. I hired a couple people to help me, and one thing led to another. And fast forward, it was like I built up kind of an agency and an outsourcing company. And then it was really when I started my podcast in 2005, where I was like, this is what I'm much more of a content creator and connector. And I like to be, I'd rather be the star than the producer. That's kind of the truth, right? And I was like, but it was just, I was able to connect with people and I was having a ton of fun. And I saw the validation I got through using my voice and being myself and just showing up, where I felt like I'd gotten pigeonholed, like in how to do this and how to do that. And it's like, people aren't necessarily willing to pay for that. And it also didn't feel like a really sustainable business model. And so then the agency and the outsourcing did, but at the same time, I'm like, I always felt like I was building someone else's business, right? And so you have to find that balance. And if it works for you, I started doing podcast services. Long story short, completely shut off all service work at the beginning of this year. I wrapped up like 2 projects and that was it. I have gone all in on a web app with a partner, Lead Surveys. And it's like, and from there, I'm now kind of thinking I'm going to move on from the WordPress Chick and go all in with Kim Doyal, because I've gotten, I don't know, I love the content piece and I've gone backwards, not backwards, but studying like direct response marketing and copy and how to, the message behind the psychology of what you're doing and how to connect with people. And I've just fallen in love with it. And I don't know, I kind of feel like it's time to spread my wings just under my own name. So here we go.
That's fantastic. And what I love about your journey, and I think it is great for other people to hear about this, is when you start off, it's not ever where you end up. And you can't, even though you can plan, you can't foresee what's going to take your interest, what people you're going to meet, who you're going to network with, and you know, the new things you're going to learn and where that actually takes you.
It is. And you know what's funny, Jen? It's like I would say right before I launched the podcast, I had debated on giving up the WordPress Chick. And I was like, and it's funny, like, because I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer. And yet I built this brand in this space that relies heavily on that, and it's just, it was when I owned that things shifted. But I feel like I've reinvented myself so many times. Like I was doing done for you podcasting services because, again, I think there's, Gary Vee, I was listening to a talk he gave recently, love him or hate him, he knows what he's doing. And he was talking about doubling down on audio. And I have been that crazy person going back to like early 1992. And I had a crate of cassette tapes in my car. I listened to books on tape and motivational speakers constantly. And it was like, audio is the easiest type of content to listen to anywhere you go. I've always got stuff in my ears. So then I started doing that service work, but it was like, again, I believe in podcasting, but I don't want to do it for other people. So here we are. It's scary. Troy asked me, I talked to him last time and he was like, so how are you making money? I'm like, I'm totally bootstrapping my life. I've got some stuff that I do, a couple retainers, but I'm going all in with the app and this content direction. So here we go.
Wow. So tell me a bit about the app.
So the app, and I'm going to just do a dumb little story. Well, no, it's dumb, but a quick little story. It was like, I had gone to this website and I opted in and it was just a modal window and it had like 3 steps on it. And it was, hey, before we give you the thing, whatever it was, tell us about yourself. And it was like, are you a podcaster, author, then the next one. And it was like, which social platforms, how big is your email list? And I just was floored because I'm like, oh my God, this guy totally knows so much about me like that, right? And so I was like, this is gold. Not to mention, I was more engaged in opting in. And I've tried quizzes and stuff. I think quizzes are great, but you also have to be good at the copy, right? You have to be good at creating a quiz that draws in your right audience, is entertaining, but gives you valuable data. So that and it was just, I felt like every time I created a quiz, it was too much work. Anyway, so I saw this survey opt-in and I was like, this is so much better to know who you're talking to and to segment from day one. So I had met my business partner in the WordPress race, probably, it was a little bit over a year ago, Gordon Orlick. He's got Web Factory. They've had a ton of plugins on Code Canyon. He reached out to help support because they were moving stuff off of Code Canyon. Long story short, he was like, hey, do you have any ideas for a plugin? We started working on something else for WordPress. And then I saw this app and I was like, or I actually saw this opt-in. I tried to hack it. Like, can I drive leads and gravity forms? And can I try to do this? And then I had a developer. He's like, well, yeah, we can make this. I'm like, yeah, but I want to sell this. Like, this is gold. WordPress would have been too many roadblocks with plugins, I think. And so I went to Gordon. I'm all, so I know we're working on this, but can we just table that for a minute? And lead surveys, I couldn't believe the name was available.
Wow.
I mean, it's a .io, but still, right? I'm like, it's very clear what it does. But it's been a long, like, we're not quite open to public. Hopefully, like, it'll be live for people to use by December 1st. But even this process has been, like, I don't know anything about a SaaS. Thank God he does. But I also was like, I don't want to just be another tool. I want us to be a company and have a culture and, like, people feel a part of our journey. And how can we get them excited about really connecting with their subscribers? And it was like, and Jen, I did a webinar for this and it was a cluster. Because I was like, I'm going to do it live streaming. I'm going to go live with this. Well, sure enough, like, the Be Live wouldn't load or something. It was just a total mess, which threw me off my game because we were pre-selling it. We still pre-sold it, but I was able to step back. And this is where we talk about, getting into emotions and stuff, right? Like, I stepped back. I had my tears that afternoon. I'm like, you need to just get off the computer, go take a nap, address this tomorrow. And then I went back at it. And it was like I spent 2 hours breaking down the webinar. And I realized I was way too into technobabble. I'm like, what we're helping people to do is to figure out who they're talking to and what they want. It's not about segmentation, right? And so then I spent another month rewriting and reworking messaging and who are we and how do we talk to people and what do they want? It was, and a lot of times, like, I just go create stuff and I write content or whatever. So to step back and spend 2 hours just writing headlines was something I didn't do. And it's like, I'm enjoying the mastery. So anyways, that's where we're at with that. That's coming soon. We brought on some other developers and here we go.
Wow, that's so exciting. So you've got to keep us updated on that how it goes and when it all comes out, because I think you're really onto something there, because it's such a, like, even with what we're doing now, Troy's trying to find out more about, we have quite a broad audience. So, how advanced are you in what you're doing? And so to be able to survey them and ask them specific questions and then tailor the information just to help them with where they're at, I think that's going to be fantastic.
Well, and I told, what's funny is I told Troy, I said, will you help me give him an account? I'm like, because I know he'll do it, right? I know he'll go through it and he'll implement and give us valuable feedback. And so, because, and Gordon keeps saying, Kim, that's not version 0. You need to slow your roll, like what I want, right? At the same time, I don't want it to be like 500 features. It needs to do what it's supposed to do, and it needs to do it really well. So then are there options for whether it's retargeting or follow-up sequences or like stacking surveys on the back end based on this answer? So it's just the beginning of a journey. I'm totally in this for the long haul, and I'm doing a new podcast for that brand. And I'm like, I want it to be fun. I want people to feel a part of it. So
I think they're great goals to have those two things as well, wanting it to be fun, wanting people to feel part of it. I think that will really hold it in good stead.
Thank you. Well, we have a mascot, and I even debated, like, should we kind of be serious? And then I started looking at SaaS companies, and the mascot's a fox. So the podcast is called Don't Give a Fox.
Perfect.
I'm all, that sets a good tone. It just is a fun, playful, people get a sense of our voices and who we are. So I'm just excited. I have no idea, I do think it's going to do well. I don't know what that looks like. what the time frame is, but we're both committed. So here we go.
That is so exciting. So if people are in the same situation, they're working, they're wanting to try a few different things, is it feasible to look at this? What would your advice be? You know, how expensive is it to do? Do you recommend getting solid in what you're doing, getting a good revenue coming in there before you sort of branch out and try different things?
Yeah, you know what? It was first of all, I couldn't have painted a better scenario, right? Because Gordon and I connected. There was an instant, he's hysterical. He cracks me up. He's super smart. I love the marketing and the brand piece of it. He also understands that because they've done a lot of white label software for other products and stuff. But so there was no fun. It's just our own time and money. Like as we go, we're funding it as we go. And, and so that was kind of a no-brainer. And it's the difference though, is it's like, I had already built an audience and people who trusted me. And the point is that this relationship came from the podcast. Like I've said so many times, yes, I've gotten clients from podcasting or sponsorships, but nothing compares to the relationships and the connection. Like, why are we here? Right? Like, I mean, yeah, I've built up a brand in WordPress, but it's like connecting with Troy and then writing for the blog. It's like relationships or what do this. So if you want to do stuff like where I said I went backward and I started doing daily emails and I started calling them the almost daily email, but it's a 600 to 700 word email usually. And it's a story with a link. But that came from watching how somebody else did it for a year. I subscribed to his list for a year. Wow. And I just watched and paid attention. And then I became a customer of his. And then I just was like, just start playing with headlines, start looking at headlines, start testing headlines. And so I just became a student of marketing instead of I don't know. I see so many people in this space that get frustrated because there's product launches and there's this. And I'm like, that's just all part of business online. It's no different than if you had an offline store and had to do direct mail, 6 of 1, right? So I wanted to have a solid foundation. So I went back to, because you can do paid traffic. I love paid ads, but it's like, it doesn't do any good if you've got nothing under the foundation. So I went back and built that. So anybody who's listening to this, be in it for the long haul. This is totally the marathon strategy. Unless you're going to pay with it by time or money, right? Ads or effort, so traffic or effort. But the thing is, the traffic's not going to do any good if your foundation isn't set, right? So anybody who's interested in stepping into something else, because I think especially in WordPress, I see a lot of people that you get kind of time for money trap, right? And it's like, how do I leverage this? How do I do this? And I just went back to, I'm really not selling anybody on Gary Vee. I totally have this love-hate relationship with him because I hate the hustle thing, but he's always saying, just document, share the journey, document, share the journey. And as soon as I started doing that and showing up as myself, it was like, oh, people like this. And now I'm like, okay, I can write pretty well. I can knock out a 2,000 word post pretty quickly. But now I go back and I edit it and I read it again. And I'm like, did that make sense? And where is it kind of cohesive and stuff? And so I to anybody, just focus on the mastery, focus on the fundamentals, get the fundamentals set up. I mean, I honestly think everything I've done in the last, it'll be 10 years in March, has brought me to this place of I can hold lead surveys now. I've got the relationships. I believe in my ability to create and course correct and own it. If it's a mistake, it's like, didn't work, move on. So we're just being super transparent.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And so I think the key takeaways for that, and like you said, you've got to put the work in and play the long game. And seeing your journey over that time, you've started and then you've built your audience and you've built the trust. And I think that's what we're doing too. We're building trust with people by doing that content that isn't crappy content. You put it, it's useful content. It's content that people would even pay for, that you're giving away for free. You're doing the podcast. So you're out there, you're owning your mistakes. I think that's all the way to start building those foundations, building the trust to get that audience, and then you can take it to the next level.
It is. And don't you think I don't even the, it's like making value deposits along the way, right? So it's like, it's crazy. There's so many times people have been like, well, what do you sell? I didn't have a portfolio on my site for the last 4 years. It was all referral stuff, but it was like, I wasn't going to just go sell something because I needed to put something out there for sale. But in the meantime, I was like, I've got this platform. I've got an audience there are cool people doing great stuff in WordPress. Let me use my platform, period. So there was zero expectation. But now, because I've given, it's like people trust me. I'm like, trust me, there's times I've emailed something. I'm like, oh, this looks great. And then I'm like, next day, I'm like, you guys, that really sucked. Don't invest your money, because I got too excited about something. But so the takeaway truly is, it's kind of that you got to give, you got to put it out there. I didn't have any expectations on anything. And the podcast was even started because I was like, that's it. I need to have some more fun. I loved podcasts, and that was it. That was totally it. And so I'm not saying not to have a strategy, but to your point, it's like you go with the intention to give and build value. And then I sort of just trust. That might sound esoteric, but you have to do the work. But, I trust that the monetization piece is coming. I'm all knock on wood.
But also, I think you touched on something then, you wanted to have fun. So you're playing to your sweet spot and your strengths. So, for some people that podcasting, oh gosh, that's not my thing. So what is your thing? What is your sweet spot? The thing that you're really good at and the thing that you really enjoy. And that's where people are going to see that true you and where your strengths are going to come out.
It is. And we're all afraid though of being judged, right? So people are like, I'm like, I totally need a haircut. I was like, I'm getting my hair done Wednesday. I was like, you know what? I just got to show up, right? And that's my other thing. Like this hashtag, just show up, doesn't mean I don't put makeup on. But so there is this innate fear in us of being judged. And for the truth though, is like most people are more concerned about themselves. Or like, I was unhappy with my weight. I don't want to get on camera. I'm like, nobody cares. They're like, just be a decent human being and show up genuinely. Like, I don't think twice when I'm watching or listening to anybody, if it's good and it's valuable or it's fun. Like I did 2 live streams last week where the live stream cut off again. I'm all, damn it. I was like, I better pull up Ecamm. And I'm like, we're back, we're good. And I'm like, it happens. So that, I don't know. It's just, you have to be willing to show up because most people don't care. So the fear is going to be there. You can't wait to not be afraid. It's going to be there.
Yep, so true. And as we say here, like I think Troy said, just take imperfect action and just do it, get it out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, nothing like, unless you're Coca-Cola and you've got like, I don't know why I picked them, but millions of dollars. And so, last little story, like I kind of have been binging on ClickFunnels content, and I had been a user early on, like first 100 customers. And I was like, I can do this stuff with the WordPress. And then I got his last book and I was like, this is brilliant. The Expert Secrets, because it got all into the messaging and stepping back, and there wasn't anything technical in it. It was all about psychology and direct response marketing and how you talk to people and stuff. So then I started watching his content and I was like, I totally like this guy. I got to see he's a good dad and a husband, and he shows up to work, and he is a prolific content creator at the same time. And I don't take joy in people having issues, but when you see, oh, their internet went down on a launch, or, oh, this broke for them, or guess what? It took 5 funnels to get the one that would hit. We need to know we're not in it alone, right? So it's that imperfect action. You have to be willing to pull the trigger and then course correct. And so that's why sharing that piece, that vulnerable piece of content, is beneficial in addition to the more tangible, listicle how-to stuff.
Spot on. And in you just saying that, I've just realized I've made a mistake in that I'm using our studio today and I haven't even got my headphones on. And so I don't even know how this is going to turn out. So hold on one sec, Kim, and I'm just going to grab those headphones from the desk. And I'm back. That was a perfect segue for that, Kim. I just realized as you were talking and I saw your earphones and I've gone, oh my God. All right.
Well, usually I use a big headset and I'm like, they're so obnoxious. So
I know. Okay, so we'll cut that. And I'm back with my headphones. This is going to be a good challenge for the editor, Darren.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm puffed out because I had to run to get my earphones. But I want to do a complete turnaround now because I was really enjoying that part of the conversation. But when I contacted Kim, we were talking about something that I thought would be really good to focus on. And with the current hurricanes that have been in America, and there's been a lot of puffed out, chatting the Facebook group, in our private Facebook group, about, the hurricanes. And what I've loved about it is some people have been really affected by it with their business, and other members have said, we're here to help. If you need us to pick up any slack, let us know, what to do. And I know, Kim, that you've had an event in your past where your husband suddenly passed away. And I sort of wanted to talk about how that affected you, and looking at our audience, how you can plan for your business if you have things like, I don't know what you'd call them, but just these unexpected life situations. So can you just tell us a bit about your story and how that sort of affected you?
Yeah, it was 14 years ago. And, I didn't have my business at the time. I was working full time in retail management, and it was a company I loved. Our kids were little. They were 6 and 2. And he worked, he worked nights, and it was, you wake up and I'm like, he's not here. And I was like, oh, maybe he went to friends. Long story short, it was an automobile accident on the way home from work. And it is so surreal for such a long time when you're like, this doesn't happen. This happens to other people, like not you. Right. And it was, I think I was probably in shock for a good year, to be honest with you. And then I kept working full time. I mean, I'm very blessed that all my family's super close. My parents, siblings were amazing. My friends are all here, but it was just, imagine having to how do you tell a 2-year-old that? Do you know what I'm saying? And my daughter at 6 understood it, but it was just, it was so surreal. And I'm such a different person though now, Jim, because I was like, all right, I'm going to find a counselor. I'm going to go through grief. I'm going to do these steps, right, to go through grief, which it doesn't work that way. And I was fortunate that I found an amazing therapist who is like a life mentor now. Like, I followed her. She retired. I go visit her like 3 hours away. But it's like, it changed my life, right, in so many ways. So fast forward, it was like, a year later, I took a leave of absence because I was very, very angry. I was like, this is not how I wanted my life to turn out. This is not what was supposed to happen, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't say I'm not type A. I'm pretty driven, but it was like, you got to be number one, that, mentality. And it's like, now I'm like, it's cool. I'm getting there, but when I started my business, it was really, and there was a lot of ups and downs in between there. And the crazy thing is, Jen, I don't know if I've shared this publicly. I actually ended up getting myself fired from that job, and I was supposed to get promoted to a district position. But what happened is, so I had been working like 5 minutes from my house. They asked me to open a new store an hour away. So I added a 2-hour commute, right, on top of like a 9 or 10 hour day. Yeah. And it was like, I can't tell you the years of heinous soccer with 2 kids, dropping one off, picking one up, it was just, and school and daycare and all that stuff. Well, I was the only salaried employee, right, in the store. And so what I did, it's not horrible, but I started paying somebody out of my personal account to work because they cut payroll. That's always the first thing they do is they cut payroll. And I was like, I can't work anymore. And so to me, it was kind of like this divine intervention, like, you got to get out. Because I knew that once I had gotten promoted, I would have been traveling. The company is based in Massachusetts. And it was like, and I did traveling for them. I was a training manager, which I love teaching them, but it was like, I did all this stuff and I was like, what kind of life would that have been for the 3 of us, And so, it was devastating. I was like this star employee, but I was like, whatever. And again, you fast forward, I tried other things. I went back to retail for a little bit. I had a small cushion in 2008 and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to go all in. And so the biggest thing that's come from that is I made a very conscious choice in, I would say, 2011. So like my therapist was still around for a couple of years, but then she retired out of the, and I stayed in touch, but I was like, I have to move through my life different. I can't keep doing things the way I've done them and expecting a different result, right? It was like, I wanted to move more gently through my life. I wanted to learn how to be present and to be in the moment and really go for it. Like, I'd been listening to all these motivational speakers and spiritual teachers so long. And it was like, okay, you got to step into this. And it's been a 14-year journey. Truly, it was like, I started probably doing like real therapy in like 2011. because I was just like, we're going to do grief counseling. I'm not talking about any other stuff, but it's just, to be on the other side of this. I wrote a post on the anniversary of his death this year because it was the first time I'd woken up and it wasn't the first thing on my mind. And
I read that post. It's the first time I'd heard about this, and it just, it hit me, It's, and we'll put a link to that because I just think it was beautifully written and from the heart, and it showed how you've moved on. You've changed and evolved.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is even that, and it wasn't intentional. Like the anniversary, I always felt like I had to, do something monumental, and we did. It was like a big day for the first, I don't know how long. And I mean, there's not a day that goes by I don't think about him, right? I've got his kids. I mean, and I've been in relationships. I've been engaged since then, and I'm not with anybody, but it was like, he was truly my best friend. And so but it was just one of those things that I was like, wow, it's just another Sunday. This feels really good. And so my whole point was, and you assume, see, this is what if anybody's listening to this, we assume everybody knows our story because it's ours, and we've probably mentioned it, or I've had it on my about page in different depths and stuff. But it was like, I was floored at how many people didn't know, because I just assumed everybody knew that part of my story, right? And that opened doors for connection and relationship. It was a Sunday. I emailed my list. I posted it then as a blog post. I think I got like 30 emails within like an hour. And then it like 300 shares that day. I was like, and it was the highest traffic day to my site in months. And it was the connection piece. And I was like, this just blew me away. So, but that's my story.
Well, and I think it touched, and that's the thing, something like this touches so many people and you don't even realize. And my mother had passed away not a year yet on Christmas Eve. And I think I read that afterwards and I just thought, it's just nice to know that people get what you're going through as well. And like you said, I think it's good to have that connection. People can actually say, oh, okay. And you've got that next level of connection. And we were talking about trust, even it's like, oh, she's been through this, that's that next level of trust. So, and you just need to say what you're comfortable in saying, that's not to say you share everything, but I think we're all going through stuff. We did Mental Health Month in May, where we did all our content was about mental health. So all our podcasts and that resonated with so many people. So it's the same thing, we're all on this journey. We're all going through difficult things. So I suppose did you want to?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, because there was a long time, like the first few posts I wrote on the WordPress Chick, I was like, that sounds like a robot. Like who even wrote, there was no personality, no voice. It's funny to me. But it's like you have to baby step your way into the sharing, right? Because, and again, I think people assume, well, nobody's interested. I'm like, you would be surprised, And to your point, like talking about your mom, it was like, I knew that feeling. It's a very surreal feeling when your life is turned upside down and you see people out like mowing their lawns and running to the grocery store. You're like, why does your life get to go on? And it's your logical brain is not there. But so it's true. A very surreal feeling. Like my life is never, ever going to be the same, but yet everybody else gets to go about life. But, then 3 blocks down the road, someone's child could have been diagnosed with cancer. So it's one of those things that like, it gives me goosebumps when you start sharing stories. You don't know who you could lift out of that funk because it's like, you're not in it alone. We all go through stuff.
So true. Now you didn't have your business then, and this was obviously an impetus. Like we've heard that story of you saying, I've had enough. This is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So with people like our audience, they've got their business running. Just say they're hit with something like this. So death of a partner or a chronic illness or something like that. From your experience, what sort of advice could you give people about how can is this something that you should plan for? Is it something that once it happens, is there steps that can make this process easier? Because you've almost got 2 parts of it. You've got the grieving process and all the mental and emotional things going on, but then you've got a business to run on the other hand. So, I don't know. First of all, I suppose, is it something we should look at preparing for?
Well, I think there is those tangible preparing for things, like life insurance. There's some of those basic financial things that you can plan for, right? And it's like, so you can do that for peace of mind, but I just don't know that there's anything, that will prepare you for being brought to your knees in life. It's like you look at the hurricanes, or the tragedy in Las Vegas last night, and it's like you just how do you prepare for that? And ideally, and this might sound very I'm totally getting goosebumps today.
Me too.
But like, ideally, I don't ever want to be ready to hear news of a mass shooting. I don't want to be ready for devastation. And here's a little story. I had somebody a friend I'd reached out to a couple weeks ago, and I just want to point this out too, like the power of stories, right? Because this is where people connect with stuff. But a friend I'd reached out to a couple weeks, and it was a Sunday, and this person was kind of into football, and they were boycotting the whole NFL, all the drama, right, around all the stuff in the country. I don't get into politics. I cut cable. I will, if I have to go for a walk and listen to a Disney soundtrack to lift I'll do it, right? I keep that. Doesn't mean I don't have opinions, but I'm always going to move towards something versus fighting against. Okay. But so I'd reached out to a friend. I was kind of in a funky space and needed to talk to a friend. They get into this whole thing about the NFL. I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of moved on. Then they go silent on me. And I thought, did I do something? And they were surprised by my lack of engagement. And I was like, hindsight's 20/20, but what I wanted to say was, so I should take care of you instead of me? Never going to happen. And right. And so I think anybody listening to this, there are times when you're thinking, I just got to survive. My house just got wiped in a hurricane, or I just lost a loved one. The business, no matter what you're going through, like your business, whatever, let it go. Let it go. You have to take care of yourself. And if people do or don't understand, you got to trust. And it's so easy to say that when you're not in it. But for people listening, I'm not sitting here on a trust fund. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, but at some point it's like, I could go sit and commute for 3 hours to San Francisco every day if I wanted to for a job, so I could pay for shit I don't need or care about. But you have to take care of yourself. And so that's how you plan. You have to, I would say you focus on that personal foundation, whether it's spiritual, it's physical, maybe it's moving. Like my daughter and I were just talking about this. I'm like, I could be in the worst mood. And if I take those dogs for a walk or take them to the dog park, I'm like, okay, I've got a different vision now to look through this. But so in terms of preparation, it kind of comes back to the foundations and the fundamentals of business. When you have the fundamentals and the foundation built, which means, do you have a support system? Do you have friends you can count on? And when you're starting a business, you can't prepare to have backup designers and developers and VAs and stuff. But if you have invested in relationships, you probably have some support. And if you have those relationships with clients, you can say, I'm going to be AOL for a month. So if you'd like to take your project elsewhere, I get it. And you have to be willing to make those difficult decisions. I'm more of a person that's like, I'll make a decision. If it's wrong, I'll deal with the consequences versus waffling. But it's really getting that sense of self and setting the best foundation for yourself. And it's a process. I mean, that whole incident with the webinar, the live streams crashing, I know they're very minuscule, but 2 years ago, Jen, I would have been a mess. I would have felt like this is a failure. Nobody's going to want this now. And now I'm like, nah, move on. Or go cry, go rest, go watch Harry Potter, go do whatever you got to do and come back to it tomorrow. Like that just takes practice.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much in that. I think I like what you said, you don't want to look at doom and gloom and think, oh, if this happens, what can I do? But if you do your basics of, okay, having your basic stuff sorted out, like life insurance, having good business strategies and processes in place. And I think crucial is that network. I think that's so crucial, of friends and family and your business network as well. I think if you've got that, that will help so much. But it comes down to it. Even I know when my mum passed and Troy was great here, he said, yep, I needed a month before she died. And I knew that was happening. So for people who have a shock like this hurricane, or that, your husband, that's even, more full on. But I knew this was coming, and I had that month, and I just thought, nothing else matters. You know, if you lose your job, I didn't care. If I lost my job, and not that that was even a possibility because it just wouldn't with Troy, he's amazing, but I didn't care. I thought, I do not care. I will work something out because at the moment that is so low on my priorities because I have to survive and get through this. And I think everyone in that situation, when you are in a situation like that, you're probably thinking the same thing. You know, this is what matters. I've got to look after myself and my family or whoever else it's involving at the time, and that's your priority.
It is. And so like in preparing for it, I mean, and that's like, look at the other side effect. You already knew you had a great job and Troy was great and stuff, but it was like, talk about validation of gratitude and appreciation for being, right? So you brought that back with you, a different understanding even, you know, and it was like, you know, I had gone up to see my therapist, I don't know, probably 2 weeks ago. And I just have been feeling this like, all right, we got to get this stuff going, right? You start feeling that pressure. And especially when you have financial responsibilities and obligations. And at the end of the day though, Jen, I'm like, I've got a roof over my head, I got a car, we got food, like nothing's falling apart. I'm not, you know, but at the same time, you start feeling like, I almost swore, but like, God, this has been 10 years. Like I'm ready for that, you know, tipping point sort of, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, to your point, like I'm not willing. It would be like being in prison if for me to go commute for a job, right? So when you get to a point where you're like, nothing else matters, I'm going to just keep showing up or whether it's with personal or your business and stuff. But it's, you know, I think so having gone to see my therapist, it was like, she's like, Kim, 5 minutes meditation. Can you just do that for me for 30 days? Ask for some guidance, you know, ask for some direction. And a week later, Jen, I was like, it's only been a week and I was doing watercolors this weekend. I was like, I'm going to go, you know, my family out of town. So I was like, I went and visited my aunt and uncle's cat for them. And I'm like, I'll go read with the cat. I went and got coffee. I was like, and I'm like, then I come back to Monday, you know? So it's like, God, I can take 5 minutes a day. So that could be setting that foundation and setting that balance. And whatever that is, it doesn't have to be spiritual. It could be running free, whatever it is. But it's so easy to get caught up in like, I got to get to the desk or I got to get to work or I've got to do another email or campaign and stuff. And I've gotten so much better about, I need to watch Outlander for 4 hours tonight because my brain. So it's finding those things, you know, and we have so much information and so much coming at us all the time, you know, F the hustle. I mean, well, that's my thing, but hustle, right? It's hustle and do the work. But you know what I found too, is like all of this shift that I'm moving towards with content and the marketing and understanding that I'm like, it never feels like work. I'm more irritated when I physically know I need a break, but my brain's like, but I want to go do, right? So I think when you find that right spot, that sweet spot, like I will work, like my week starts like this. And then by the end, I'm like, I got to stop because I just go till I crash. Right. But it's like, I know that about myself. So I'm like, that's fine. I don't know where I went with that. I'm sorry.
No, I like where you're going though, because I think we're all so similar, especially when you've got your own business. You want to just put in 100% all of the time. And it's so easy to on the weekend go in and just check out those emails. But I think, and again, this is some of the stuff we were talking about in Mental Health Week. It's just prioritizing a little bit of time where you can just reset that circuit and just pause, do what you need to do, whether it's exercise or whether it's just breathing for a minute or whatever it is, to make sure that you're still filling up your cup and you've got enough to give to your clients and you've got enough to give to your work and your family and friends.
And all of that is all baby steps too, right? Like I remember the first time I tried meditation, I'm like, I am going to jump out of my seat here in a minute. And so like, I'll do guided meditations or like, you know, when I was working, I thrived on, I'm so busy, right? It was like busy was a badge of honor.
Definitely.
And it's so not now. I'm like, yeah, I totally knocked out a 2,000 word post and a podcast and I took a nap, like, cool, right? Like, I mean, seriously, it's like, that's the kind of stuff now. Like there is, it sounds so trite, but yet you have to, I think part of this is like, you don't preach it because you know, until you go through it, like we're ready when we're ready, right? Yeah. It's like, I don't know how many times I've listened to something or read something. And like the 5th time I'm like, oh, now I get it because I'm ready to hear that message. And so, you know, you got to either meditate or not to like decide if it works for you. You can't decide it doesn't, but I don't know. It's all a process.
Yeah, it's so true when you're ready. I've tried the meditation thing and it just doesn't gel, and I keep going back and it doesn't gel. So, but I don't think that's a be all and end all. Like I'm listening to the Slow Home podcast at the moment, and I'm loving that. And it's all about slowing down, but it's just about doing it in little ways that suit you. And so I love that. Even just stop for 1 minute and just, you know, at your desk, stop for 1 minute and just breathe for a minute, concentrate on the breath. That's it. And to me, I think, well, I can do that. I can't sit for 20 minutes and meditate, but I can do 1 minute.
Well, and I have mantras now, right? Like there was this Hawaiian, Ho'oponopono, and it's, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And my brain was like, what am I sorry for? Like the first time I heard that, right? It was like your ego was like, but I'll go get a massage for 90 minutes and it's a clearing technique. And there's a study behind it with this doctor who literally cured mentally criminal patients. And like they had to close the hospital down because people were getting well because of this technique. And believe it or not, but I'm like, I got nothing to lose by saying 4 simple sentences in my head. Or like my mom's like that with meditation. She's like, oh, I have a hard time. I'm like, listen to a piece of music. Pick a piece of music that inspires you and just breathe. Or, you know, so it's like, I fight it. And then it's like, it works for me, but then why do I stop? Because I'm like, everything's good, right? It's like, well, why is everything good, Kim?
Exactly. You got to keep it going.
Yeah.
Kim, I love chatting to you, and I just, you know, I think, I just feel like I'm on the same wavelength. Got so many, you know, what you're saying, it's just really resonating. And I hope that it's resonated with some of our listeners, and I know that it actually will. So I really appreciate the time that you've spent today with us, and we'll put all those links, and I'm going to put that link that you said, that Hawaiian, I'll get that from you.
Yeah.
And we'll put that in there too, because I'm interested in that too. So thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you with us, and keep up the good work and keep us updated on what's going on.
I will. This has been so fun, Jen. Thank you. I'm so happy we got to I can't talk today, but you know what I meant. We can connect together. I'm like, I've only had 2 coffees, but that's all right. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Have a good night.
You too.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kim Doyal as much as I did. I think Kim has so much to offer in terms of not just business strategies, but life strategies as well. I got so much out of it, and she was a pleasure to talk to. So if you did enjoy it, please leave us a comment on the website, wpelevation.com/Kim Doyal, and tell us what you thought. You can also give us a rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, wpelevation.com/iTunes. But I'd love to hear from you and hear what you thought of Kim's conversation with me today. Also, if you are on the website, we always have a great free downloadable, so make sure you check that out. So thank you for joining me today, and until I see you next on the WP Elevation podcast, go elevate.